Hello again, this is Rich Troxler, aka Rich Trox, and welcome to my channel, The View from the Beach. Well, we've recently completed another orbit around the sun, and one of my New Year's resolutions was to add a new section on kayaking to my channel. So this video will be my first addition to that section. Many surf fishermen have been adding kayaks to their arsenal, and why not? For if you are fortunate enough to live in an area that also has bays or rivers nearby, then kayaks open up a whole new world of fishing possibilities to you. And if you also happen to enjoy sweetwater action, kayaks will get you off the bank and into some great action. So if you have been thinking about buying a kayak, but are on a budget, or just not sure of what you need, then you are in the right place. I'll show you how to turn low-cost kayaks into lean, mean fishing machines. Before I go any further, let me get the disclaimer out of the way. The information provided on this video is based exclusively on my own experiences and should not be considered the be-all and end-all of fishing. It is intended solely to stimulate thought, provide direction, and encourage experimentation, in the sincere hope that it may be of help to you on your surf fishing journey. End of disclaimer. So let's start with a few basic concepts about kayaks and build from there. For starters, there are two types of kayak hull designs, the sit-in and the sit-on-top. With a sit-in kayak, you climb inside the hull, and that's where you stay, along with any water that washes in with you. Sit-in kayaks are not really designed to be effective fishing platforms, so you'll want to go with a sit-on-top hull design. Sit-on-top kayaks offer several advantages as fishing platforms, as well as a very important safety feature. So let's take a closer look at this design. Sit-on-top kayaks are constructed in a manner akin to boats in that they have a hull and a deck, and the area in between the two is watertight. This makes them buoyant, which is the important safety feature I previously mentioned. Should you happen to get rolled over, you can climb back on, as your kayak will not sink. Also, because the deck of a sit-on-top kayak is above the waterline, you sit higher up, so you have a better field of vision, and the flat decks allow for ease of movement, tackle storage options, and water drainage through scuppers on the deck should you happen to take on some water. And depending upon your price range, many of the sit-on-top kayaks have forward and rear deck hatches that let you stow gear in the hull and also provide access for wiring fish finders and other accessories. So for a fishing platform, sit-on-top kayaks are really the only way to go. All that's left now is adding the necessary accessories to make it your fishing machine. At this point, a short discussion on hardware is in order. For starters, most kayaks are made of polyethylene, which is a slippery kind of plastic, so glues, epoxies, and adhesives don't stick well to it. So don't even bother trying to mount anything to your kayak with any of these. When mounting items like rod holders and such to your kayak, you generally use what's known as a well nut. You drill out the correct size hole for the rubber core and plug it in. Then you run your screw through your item hole and thread it into the threaded brass insert at the base of the rubber core. As you tighten the screw down on whatever item you're mounting into the well nut, the threaded brass insert at the base of the rubber core is drawn toward the inside surface of the kayak, causing the rubber to swell, much like the common molly bolt. It works most of the time, but you have to make sure you get the right depth and hole size and tighten it completely and then test it, because it can slip out. An alternative to the well nut that I have used is the common lead drywall anchor. You can find these at any Home Depot store. Just make sure you pick the right size anchor for the screw you are going to use and that you drill the proper size hole for the anchor thread. They hold really well. The other important point is pretty much common sense. Any hardware that goes on your kayak has to be either stainless steel, brass, or plastic. Otherwise, expect corrosion failure in very short order. My first kayak was the Pelican Boost 100 in tan color. This picture is from the Walmart website, and they listed it at $349. I bought mine from Dick's Sporting Goods about 8 years ago, and back then it only cost me $249. I also bought a basic two-piece paddle that at today's price will run about $50, and there are several models available at that price point. Dick's no longer carries the Boost 100, although it appears to have been replaced with an almost identical version kayak at the same price point of $349 that goes by the name of Bandit NXT. I read through the specs of both, and they are basically identical, minus the two built-in rod holders behind the seat that was included on the Pelican Boost 100. So after getting my Boost 100 home from the store, it didn't take me long, a matter of minutes really, before I started going to work on it. I installed a makeshift anchor trolley system with some pulleys I had laying around my shop. I'll explain anchor trolleys later in the video, and maybe in more detail in a separate video down the road. I also set up my anchor system, which again I'll explain more about later, and then I mounted a Scotty rod holder to the center area in front of the seat to go with the two built-in rod holders behind the seat. Over time I made numerous modifications and improvements to the Boost 100. I discovered that it pays to have a place to stow your paddle when not in use, so I installed a taco-style paddle clip. I played around with various locations on the right side of the Boost 100 until I found a location where the taco holder lay flat and kept the paddle parallel to the kayak. I then marked the two holes with a Sharpie marker, drilled the right size hole for the well nuts I was using, and installed the taco-style paddle clip. I also bought a paddle strap, which attaches to your paddle and your kayak to keep your paddle from floating off should you drop it in the water, but I never really use it. I also built a kayak cart out of PVC tubing, pool noodles, a threaded rod, and some wheels I got at Harbor Freight. My first version, the black one you see in the picture, was too high, which made the kayak top-heavy when loaded and prone to tipping over on uneven surfaces. Also, the wheels I chose were too small and bogged down in the sand. My second version, which I still use today, is lower to the ground and has larger round wheels which track better in the sand. Kayak carts can also be bought online if you want to lay out the cash. I didn't like sitting in the molded seat and wanted to be higher up, so I found a boat seat at the sporting goods section of my local Walmart and mounted it on a wood platform that was then shaped and attached to the Boost 100 using lead drywall anchors. I then finished it off by painting the wood platform a color close to that of the kayak. In addition to gaining better line of sight and more comfort, I now add space under the platform to stow tackle, anchor, and other stuff. By raising my 6'1", 185-pound frame 8 inches higher on that kayak made a big difference in the center of gravity and made it much easier for me to tip over when large boat wakes came by. So I made adjustable pontoons out of PVC tubing, crab buoys, and flag mounts mounted to another wood platform that I shaped and attached to the rear of the Boost 100. 2 crab buoys on each side provided 16 pounds of upward lift, so I didn't need to extend out very far to get the stability I needed. Each side's flag mount base was permanently mounted to the wood platform, while the mating piece was permanently attached to the pontoon arm, which made the pontoons removable for travel and adjustable for the amount of weight the kayak was carrying. It worked quite well, as I couldn't have flipped that kayak over if I tried. I fished for several years with that kayak, caught a lot of fish from it, and it served me well for the little money I put into it. For you Star Trek fans, it always reminded me of a Klingon bird of prey. But there came a time when I stumbled across what I considered a really good deal on a new 12-foot kayak, and I bought it on the spot. I happened to be walking into my local Walmart's garden area, and they had this kayak leaning up on the outside wall with several others. It was the Ozark Trail Pro Angler 12 kayak, and it had a sign hanging from it that said $459. I'm thinking, that can't be right. So I went and found a salesman, and they confirmed it was correct. so I bought it. I'm sure they're more expensive now, but anyway, I put the Boost 100 up for sale, sold it almost immediately, and then set to work on my new kayak. Some improvements went in instantly and others over time, so I'm just going to go with what's on the videos, which are going to jump around between the GoPro on my head and my other camera on a stand. The first modification I had to make was on the seat. The seat had a two-level slotted arrangement, but no way to lock the seat in either the upper or lower level, so it just kept slipping down into the lower level. I wanted to lock it in the upper level because I liked the storage it gave me underneath the seat, so I drilled holes in the chair frame and screwed it into the slotted base in the upper position. I did this in all four corners, and that took care of the sliding chair problem. The second modification was that I added two more rod holders to the back deck behind the seat. This brought my total rod count up to 4 rods, which is what I typically fish with. Milk crate systems are also commonly used behind kayak seats for rod and tackle storage, but having a rear hatch behind my seat made using one of those impractical. I'm sure you can buy milk crate systems, but they are fairly easy to make yourself, and there are plenty of examples online. Another addition I made came from something I found in my local Walmart. Its original purpose was as an over-the-car seat storage unit. It had a long skinny flap that fit between the seat top and the headrest and laid down on the seat, while the storage unit hung behind the seat. I cut off the flap and sewed on a couple of belt-type loops at either end so that I could thread it onto one of the kayak seat support straps. So this gives me a convenient place to store bug spray, sunscreen, paper towels, extra gear and leaders, whatever I need basically. In the side pockets, I keep some tow ropes handy for when I'm walking the kayak over shallows. You can never have enough storage. On the front sides of the kayak, there are tracks that come mounted to the kayak, so I purchased a pair of Scotty rod holders for them. These are two-piece rod holders. The bottom cylindrical part fits into the slot in the track from the middle and can slide anywhere along the track. You then tighten them down by turning them clockwise. The rod holder itself then snaps into the top part of the cylindrical base and is fully adjustable. These are useful if you plan on doing a lot of trolling from your kayak. I usually use just the one to my right to hold my rod while I'm baiting up, unhooking a fish, or sometimes just to hold my rod while bait fishing. If you plan on anchoring your kayak, or more accurately, fishing from an anchored kayak, then you are going to want to install a trolley system for your anchor. I'm not going to give you a step-by-step instructional on how to do this, as there are already a bunch of videos on YouTube on how this is done. All I will say is that make sure you buy a quality trolley system, either plastic or stainless, and make sure all components are installed securely. When you're out on the water, you can get sideways in a current when retrieving your anchor, and you don't want your pulleys popping out at that point. I know there are other methods, but I work my system using a brass clip ring to connect my anchor line to my trolley line. I throw my anchor, wait for it to hold bottom, and then double the line and run it through and over the hole in the clip ring to secure it to the clip ring. Then I clip the ring to the trolley line and run it either fore or aft depending upon whether I want to be anchored from the bow or stern. Depending upon which way the wind is blowing and how hard, you may have to mess with it some to get the position right. Sometimes you just have to settle for as close as you can get. Ultimately, I wound up buying a fish finder. This required the installation of a ball mount for the fish finder mount that I bought. While most people mount their fish finders out front, I opted to mount mine tight to my left side. I did this for two reasons. The first and main reason is this. I bought a small fish finder, and due to my vision, I wouldn't see it very well out in front of me by my feet. The second reason is due to the way I fish. I really didn't like the idea of having something sitting in the way on the side of the kayak that I land fish on. My setup suits me, but you'll have to find a configuration that works for you. Different strokes for different folks, and all that. This next hack was a great little find in Home Depot. I found these tool belt pouches while looking for knee pads and thought they'd be perfect for the kayak. I bought 2 of them. Although you can't see it in the video, I installed a couple of plastic loops, the type you see on the anchor trolley, down at the base of the kayak about 8 inches apart and tied some elastic cord across them to hold down the base of these tool belt pouches. I then slide the tool belt pouch down behind the elastic cord and wrap the Velcro belt attachment around the chair frame. Instant storage. A wood dowel for snapping snags with braid, scissors for cutting braid, and fish grips go into the tool belt pouch on my left. Pliers and a bait cutting knife go into the tool belt pouch on my right. A place for everything and everything in its place. And as with my first kayak, I installed a taco-style paddle holder. I should install a lock strap or some other method of securing the paddle to the kayak, but I haven't yet. But I do carry a spare paddle in case this one gets bumped off the kayak and floats away too far. This will give you an idea of what I look like fully loaded. I typically carry 4 rods with my bait cooler in the back. I have my fish finder to my left. Underneath the seat, I have my tackle tray with hooks, sinkers, plugs, rubber bodies, lead heads, cutting board on the side, everything I'm going to need for where I'm fishing. Then I have my gulp shads, my anchor, my battery container, and all my tools. In the front storage hatch, I have a fish bag and a cast net. The strap is for standing up, something that I don't do due to my balance issues. That pretty much covers the modifications and hacks I made to this kayak. I will be doing separate videos on how I made my watertight battery container and how I installed my through-hull transducer, so stay tuned for those. All that's left now is to put it on the cart, wheel it over to my van, load it up and go fishing. Learning to catch fish from the surf, kayak, or anywhere for that matter, is a lifelong process. Now, more than ever, learn to enjoy the ride, for you never know what tomorrow may bring. That's my view from the beach. So until next time, be well and catch 'em up.